This is the first time I'm recording with two people who are actually on my same team. It's actually my first podcast with two people, and these are teammates of mine. And I have to say, I've been so impressed and honored to work with both of you. I have Galvin Olsen-Smith and Emma Jacobs. Galvin, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Wrapping up a couple of projects last week and this week. Excited to be here as one of your first dual guests.
Yes, and Emma, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am on a pretty challenging project right now, but chugging along, and it seems like we're finally starting to make some good progress. I'm also equally excited. I have to tell you, it's been kind of a dream of mine to be on a podcast for a few years now, so I feel very special that you thought of asking me.
Well, you're both special, and it's an honor to be your colleague and teammate. One reason I have you guys on is because you're basically, this is your first job out of college, as I understand it. And I remember my first job out of college was a consulting job. And I just remember being actually kind of miserable and thinking, what have I done with my life? I studied modern poetry. I was gonna, be a poetry critic. And believe it or not, that doesn't pay that well. So I got into consulting, and like almost 30 years later, here I am. So I'll start with Galvin. So what did you do in college, and how did you first learn about consulting? When was that your dream job growing up?
Consulting was certainly not my dream job growing up. I didn't know that consulting existed until around the last year I was in college. So would have been some pretty good foresight, but I didn't have the knowledge. In college, I was a linguistics major in an English department, or as people like to call it here, an English major. So business, tech, STEM, consulting in general, never really anything I was taught formally. I did have a lot of experience outside of college doing some kind of internal consulting work for web accessibility and web design at my alma mater. But it wasn't until I went to the career fair and just happened to stumble upon the Atrium booth that I even considered that consulting might be for me. And tying back to my major, the person that I spoke to at the Atrium booth was one of the only people at the entire career fair that not only gave me the time of day, but was also interested to even know what I was studying as part of my degree.
Very interesting. What about you, Emma?
Yeah, so I would say, same as Galvin, I definitely did not see myself as a consultant for my dream job. However, my background with my school is in business, so I went to school for business marketing. When I was in school, I was a part of the American Marketing Association, and we actually started our own consulting branch while I was there. So we were doing consulting for the College of Business. We had other clients just within our community, and that was where my interest in consulting really started. So fast forward from that, I knew I wanted to get into either some type of account executive work or some type of consulting work. At the career fair, what I didn't know was that I was interested in analytics and AI consulting. However, I love learning new technologies, and I wanted to be on the brink of something that was going to explode. And I knew that was going to be AI and machine learning. So when I saw Atrium at our career fair, I just thought, I cannot miss this opportunity. I have to talk to them. So I talked to them, and here we are.
Amazing.
Almost 1.5 years later.
So it sounds like those career fairs actually work. It's funny. So Emma, it sounds like you knew about consulting. I think when I was in college, I was like, it was hard for me to wrap my head around. So it's like, you don't work for the company, but you work for a company. But it's just like, I remember trying to explain it to my parents, like, so I don't work for Abbott Laboratories, the big pharmaceutical company, but I work for a company that works for them. I don't know. So that's really interesting. So So you both decided on coming to Atrium. And this is going to sound like a commercial for Atrium. So Atrium has a particular program aimed, obviously, towards college students. Could start with Emma. Could you tell me about that program and what was it like?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask about it is drinking from a fire hose, because it really is just in 3 months a crash course on everything Salesforce. So you are studying for your admin exam, but at the same time, you're also learning about Atrium as a company. So we learned about our methodology. We had all of the different team meetings. Plus, we're learning just about, coding, the technologies we use here, our partners. So it's not just Salesforce, but heavily focused on Salesforce. So really quickly I did learn, okay, Salesforce is what we'll be using. However, I will say I love one thing, just to kind of, if we are doing a type of commercial here to boost up Atrium, is I love that they pair us with colleagues of all different types of backgrounds. So having Galvin from the linguistic background, having Trey and Anders with more of that math and economics background, and being able to hear their perspective on things was absolutely incredible. So I think it's cool that we bring in so many different types of people for that program, and it made it really interesting for me.
Right. Wow, 3 months. But my onboarding was about 30 minutes and I got a slideshow. So you guys are obviously more special. Galvin, you said you met Atrium at a career fair. What was the interview process like? I imagine you just didn't sign up like the Army.
So I spoke with a man who is the delivery lead at Atrium at just the booth. We chatted, we talked about my background, his background, what Atrium does, the space that Atrium occupies. And the next day, I had an interview actually with one of the founding members of Atrium. And you can imagine I was very surprised when he introduced himself about who I was actually speaking to. But ultimately, it went really well. I was able to talk about the data side of linguistics. There are a lot of cutting edge is maybe not the best phrase, but there's a lot of up and coming science that integrates linguistics and more traditional data science, and computational linguistics is a super growing field. It was one I was already interested in, and we managed to talk a little bit about what that would look like for AI, for example. And I think that the questions I asked him specifically about that were what made him want to keep me moving. And I did keep moving, and I think I had 3 or 4 interviews after that. They were kind of over the span of a couple months, I think. And I don't remember all who I even spoke to at this point. It's been so long, but definitely, it felt like, okay, I'm still interviewing people. Like, this is a big deal. When do I even know? Like, are I getting these interviews because they want me? It was just a whole,
Right.
I didn't know how many other candidates there were. I did know that there were some people in the room before me at Boise State, my alma mater, when I went to go interview. But it was just a whole lot of interviews and not a whole lot of information. So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. Emma, similar experience for you?
Very similar. I would say after every step in our interview process, I got very excited because I was thinking, yay, I made it to the next step. And then another interview would come up. I was thinking, man, this is a lot of interviews.
It's kind of a hazing ritual,
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've been the interviewer and interviewee, but that's interesting. So you took the job, you got the training, and it's been about what? A little over a year now, right? Is that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually like a year and 5 months, Emma.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Kind of on a year.
So I remember my first year out of college. It was a long time ago, but I remember the first time summer came around and there was no break. There was no like end. Like there's no summer break when you work. And maybe if you work in Europe, it's different. But you get that routine since you were in kindergarten that you start in the fall, you finish in the in the spring, and then you have the summer, right? And it was kind of like shocking and depressing. Like, this is the rest of my life until I either become independently wealthy or retire, whichever comes first. So uh, I guess I'll start with Emma. What's been the hardest lesson this last year or so?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think one of the hardest things for me has been, especially with this last year and the previous year too, with COVID, is taking personal time for myself. I've found that when there isn't a lot going on, or there isn't a lot to do, or we're staying home, or especially with being able to work from home with consulting, I tend to kind of gravitate inwards and stick to hobbies within my house. However, I would say I am a big extrovert, and so I loved going to the university. I loved school because I got to interact with so many different types of people every day, and I kind of thrive on that social interaction. So I would say one of the biggest lessons I've taken away from consulting, working from home, just entering the workforce in general, is making sure that I'm still making time to go out and be social with people when I can, in a safe
Right.
environment, but ensuring that I don't stay locked inside. And, especially when you're on a difficult project, it can be easy to just work late into the night, power through. But I think it's so important to take that time for yourself and to make sure you're prioritizing your health as well, however that might look, even if that's just personal time. For me, it's spending time with my family and my friends and my partner. So, yeah.
Beautiful. What about you, Galvin? What's been the hard lesson?
Well, I think I'm definitely with you that coming out of, 12 plus years of school, there being no perceptible endpoint to work is a little bit of a psychological adjustment. I think too, though, consulting in particular kind of has its own seasons, and we've only been around, less than a year and a half, but you can start to see those patterns emerge already. And it's certainly something that I can observe in my more seasoned coworkers. There are times of year that you might want to prioritize getting off work, for example. So there is that aspect, but I think I agree with everything Emma said. Particularly, we were both on different but quite challenging projects very soon from joining Atrium. I actually did not have the full 3 months of training experience in the Luminate program because of that project, which is when I was on with John. But overall, just kind of that, jumping in, going, and there's no perceived end thing. But I will say just one more thing, that the nature of consulting, ideally, I think for a lot of us, is that although you don't have like a summer break, you're also not doing the same thing for years, ideally. Right. You're on a project, and then a few months later, you're on a different project, and then a few months later, you're on a different project, and they vary in lengths, and they vary in what you're working with. That's kind of the ideal. That's not how it works in real life, but that variety is something that has kept me going a lot.
It is. It does bring its own stress, right? Because it's almost like getting hired and laid off over and over again throughout a year, right? So you have to get used to being the new kid. Speaking of being the new kid, I remember my first year. Still, while I still have these memories, I should still record them because I was young, but I also looked very young. I have what they call Ralph Macchio disease, where you look much younger than you are. So I remember being in a meeting and someone turned to me and he said to me, "Are you like 12 years old?" Which is rough, right, in a corporate environment. But it was a different time. But and I guess I'll start with Emma. Have you felt like people took you seriously, being your age? And I'll throw gender in that too. We hear a lot about women in technology, and I know it's a little bit weird at times. So have you felt any of that?
Yeah, I really like that question. I would say definitely I've had some of that imposter syndrome myself, my first year of consulting, because everybody here just is brilliant. They're geniuses. And so being surrounded by these really intelligent people coming into a project my first project I was on, just the people I was surrounded with, they're incredible, very smart. For me, I would say it was a little intimidating. However, I think on my first project, I was a little bit shielded within that first year of not having to be kind of that first person facing with the client. However, moving into my second project, which has been significantly more challenging, where I am that lead person working with the client, still very new into consulting though, I have noticed a little bit of, if I'll be speaking in a business meeting with a technical folk, maybe a technical folk will want to gravitate more to someone who's technical and sometimes who's also a male. And so that has been challenging for me because it's also, how do I continue to find my voice and not let that get me down because I am newer? And how can I back up the experience I do have so that they trust me and want to hear from me? So I would say that is something I have found to be a bit of a struggle as I've moved into more of that lead facing position with clients, especially being new into consulting. Because some people get on and can say, yeah, my last 10 years with Salesforce and then my 5 previous years doing such and such with consulting. And here I am with a year and a half of experience with consulting.
Yeah. And Galvin, I've worked with you directly, so I know you're a superstar, but have you ever felt kind of the same things that Emma felt?
Well, thanks. First of all, you're a superstar too, John.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, for sure. And, you know, I think there's imposter syndrome, which is one thing. There's recognizing how much you have to learn and how much you want to learn, which is another. And those can go together or they can absolutely not. I think it completely depends on the person.
Right.
And then there's also just the fact that for some people, it's literally never going to matter how much you know because they already have an idea about what you're there to do, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think that is certainly affected by sexism and people not wanting to take younger people seriously. Although I know for sure that happens with people who are older as well in the workforce. There's kind of, you know, these two ends. So there's that, but there's also just that as a consultant, your job is essentially to go in and tell other people the best way to do their jobs.
Right.
Or to say, here's what's going to help you do your job. And we do discovery, right? We work with people, especially as strategists. We want to figure out what they think they need and really emphasize that in our solution design, right? And working as a team. But at the end of the day, we're going in there, we're making changes, and not everybody likes change. And so when you start there and you put other stuff on top, there's definitely there can be a recipe for problems.
Yeah. I mean, so 30 years from now, you have ageism to look forward to, which is, I mean, as an ism, it's a lot more socially acceptable, unfortunately. So something to look forward to. But I think what you both say about imposter syndrome is something that we all deal with, and it never goes away. And it's part of not being a psychopath, right? Is that, you know, understanding you don't know everything. And sometimes if you're really aware of that, the emotion is there. But I think as a consultant, you know, we just have to know a little bit more than our clients, and our clients are buried in their day to day. So, you know, no matter your age or experience, you can bring a different perspective, you know, that can help. That's my avuncular advice. So, what makes you happy about consulting versus, you know, you thought about working, and I'll start with Emma. You know, you could be working at a marketing firm right now or marketing at a company, but you're a consultant. So what gets you out of bed in the morning and excites you about your job?
Yeah, so for me, I would say it's the endless learning opportunities. And it's the fact that I think you already mentioned this, but really no one day as a consultant is ever going to be exactly the same.
Right.
And so if you had a really tough week or if you are on a really tough project, you can look forward to the fact that you are going to gain so much experience from that and those challenges, and you are going to grow immensely. But also, I'm not stuck in this specific role for 4 more years. It could be a few more months, and then you're going to go to a new project that could have its own challenges. But I think it kind of gives you that hope and excitement of getting to constantly learn, constantly challenge yourself in different ways.
Right.
The other thing for me that I would say is very impactful, and this just goes into company culture. I want to work for a company that has great people that care about being a part of a team and helping each other. So even when I'm on a tough project, having teammates that are there and have my back and will back me up and build me up and encourage me just makes it so much more motivating to want to do my best and go above and beyond for them. And I think when everybody kind of has that mindset, no matter how tough the situation, you'll make it through. I would say those are two of the things that really motivate me and that I really appreciate about Atrium.
Yeah, that's nice. What about you, Galvin?
Well, I definitely want to second that. I do love the people that I've ended up with. And I think that, that's not something that is guaranteed anywhere ever, regardless of what you think you're going to do in life. You don't always find a group of people that share your values and understand the way your brain works.
Yeah.
So it's been really great at Atrium. I think also, if I look back to where I was in my final year of college, I had a lot of possibilities open to me. Wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I knew that based off of what I was doing, particularly with technical documentation and web design, that I wanted to go into a more technical direction. I had a little bit of experience with data science, a little bit of experience with some language related similar stuff, right? But that was not even on like the first, I would say that's not even in the top 5 things that I actually wanted to do. And I wouldn't have seriously considered going for it on my own if I hadn't just happened to go to the career fair that day.
Yeah.
So, big stroke of luck, especially getting a job in 2020 and having that already there for me. But
yeah. And Galvin, you and I both come from like kind of the literary world in some sense, but we got into technology. What technologies excite you now and you look forward to learning and diving deeper into?
Well, I feel like I'm legally obligated to say something about Salesforce. So something about Salesforce.
Yes.
But more seriously, I guess Tableau is owned by Salesforce now, but Tableau,
all technologies will be owned by Salesforce at some point.
Yeah, at some point, right? We're just chugging along to that point. Tableau is data visualization software that has a lot of business applications, and it also has a lot of applications for people that just like to look at charts. So that's fun. Looking forward to that. But I think I'm kind of a broken record here. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how artificial intelligence based on language, producing it, interpreting it, whatever. I'm really interested in seeing new use cases for that. I'm interested in seeing improvements of existing technology, right? Salesforce has a ton of that. They've got conversation insights, they've got chat bots, so much, NLP at Salesforce, but there's also stuff that hasn't even been invented yet that we're just on the brink of, and that's something I'm really excited about. And I think just in general, it's really cool to think of this kind of pie in the sky technology for most average people being something that we can actually just have at our fingertips pretty soon here in the next few years.
Right. And I know you have an accessibility background, so the potential for people with disabilities is really going to be mind-blowing, I think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What about you, Emma? What technologies are you seeing coming down the pike that gets you excited?
Well, I would definitely have to agree with Galvin on the more integration of AI and machine learning. I think we're going to see that just more and more. We're already seeing it a lot, with next best action, all sorts of things. But I do think that that will be something that becomes very prominent and a lot of companies are looking for it. So I'm really excited to see how people choose to integrate that and choose to go after that. I'd also say I'm really interested in just data visualization itself. I do love the Tableau aspect, but for me within Salesforce, the Tableau CRM, so more of that
Right.
going in and being able to surface data you already
So
have
my
existing.
dog's going crazy. Keep going.
Good. But being able to, Mochi, being able to go in and grab that data you already have existing in one place and show
Right.
that and make recommendations based on that. We're already doing that, but I'm excited to see how we take that even further.
Right.
How I'm sure, as you said, Salesforce will own every technology eventually. And I'm excited to see what more will come out of that and how it will grow further.
Yeah.
The other one I'm interested in is I'm actually very interested in Snowflake as well, as kind of that data hub. That's something I've been interested since I started. I worked with one of my coworkers who was kind of the Snowflake expert, who's no longer with us, but he did pique my interest on it. So
You make it
that's
sound
something
like he died.
Right. He did
Oh, he's
die.
with us. He's alive. He's just Atrium.
He's no longer with us.
He's great, and we all learned a lot from him when he was still employed at this company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was incredible. And so because of that, I want to, when I have more time, start studying it, understanding it, and
Yeah.
getting excited about it.
Yeah. I guess when I got out of college and started working, a lot of things shocked me about the corporate world. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about taxes and was like shocked to see my paycheck or 401ks or insurance, all that stuff. Galvin, what shocked you about corporate America or corporate world? I don't know, the world of corporations.
Yeah, well, I think for me it might be a little bit different because work in general, I mean, I've been working since I was legally allowed to work at like 14 or whatever. And all of that experience prior to Atrium, though, has been nonprofit, public sector, freelance, education, youth development, whatever. And a lot of stuff, it very much was, it was office work. You have that environment where just a bunch of people sitting at a computer, but it's totally not the same as private sector, corporate, like you're saying, right? And I think for me, the main thing has just been, first of all, so much of that is applicable and transferable. So I don't want to say it isn't, but the attitudes and kind of vibes, I guess, of the private sector in general are pretty different than they are when you're looking at nonprofit and or public.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think that people are people and there's a lot of similarities in terms of like who wants power in a certain situation, for example, there's also stuff that you just don't consider in one position or the other, and trying to navigate what's relevant and what matters to the people around me, the people that I'm working with, the customers that I'm working with, because things aren't always prioritized in the same way as with my background. So figuring that out has been interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Emma?
Yeah, for me, this might sound interesting. I don't know if this is the best way to answer it, but I'm going to go for it. It was honestly the career structure of working in this environment. At your other jobs, other jobs I've had, there was always, you could move into a higher position if you worked hard. But with this position, really being able to grow and get certain skills that you need to kind of move into a new position, and having that kind of be something you hold yourself accountable to, and you talk with your boss and you say, hey, this is what I'm doing and how can I grow in this? Having that professional relationship with your boss, I've never had that before. And so that kind of came as something that I knew I would have, but I didn't know it would be so great and so exciting, and I love it. So
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really, well, I won't say that. I never really considered myself as someone who would be like a career person until I had a career. You know what I mean? And now it's like, oh, this is what the fuss is all about, right?
Yeah.
I delivered pizza before I got into consulting, so
I worked at
That
an
was
ice
a
cream store. And it was
that didn't, maybe surprise that didn't prepare me for corporate world, right? But it did teach me about customer relations, I guess. Um, I mean, it's fascinating to me. You guys started at a very weird time in history. I think when I finished college, there was kind of a tech boom. Uh, Russia wasn't invading places. There weren't diseases killing everybody. There were diseases, but you know, um, it was a different world in many ways. And you guys worked through COVID, right? And it, it's it's a different world. So, how have you managed stress, Emma? How have you managed stress?
Well, I'll be the first to say I'm not the best at managing stress. And I do let it get the best of me sometimes. And so I've learned the hard way that that is something I have to stay on top of. The interesting thing about stress is I think it's something that can compound and really sneak up on you if you're not aware of it. You
Yeah,
just start taking on, more and more tasks. And if you're not aware of where your limits are and your bounds are, you can really easily find yourself overwhelmed, especially if you don't know how thin stretched you've been. And that's something that has been kind of a learning curve for me, newer into my career.
yeah,
I will say what's helped me is the first thing is just going to the gym, being active helps so much. I love trying new things that get me out of my own head. I recently took an advanced beginner ballet class, and it has been so fun, and it has just really gotten me out of my work head. And it's so fun once a week to just get to look forward to that
yeah,
and to really have something exciting and energizing that's active outside of work. So having other hobbies and things to look forward to has helped me so much. The other thing is when I'm not working, taking my mind off work, because it's easy
yeah.
to not be working, but your brain is still at work. And so when I
Mhm.
leave and I'm done, just telling myself, you're done. So whatever
Yeah,
fires there are, you can put those out tomorrow. That's been the biggest thing for me.
yeah. What about you, Galvin?
Yeah, I mean, definitely being able to leave work at work, even if work is a corner of your living room,
Yeah,
right? Which I think has been something that everybody, many people have had to learn over the last couple of years when, you work in an office. And I think too, we started September of 2020. We had been supposed to start in June of 2020. It was pushed forward for obvious reasons or pushed back, whatever. I still get that mixed up.
yeah,
And we started, everything was still kind of uncertain, but there was also this, well, when we start traveling again next year, or well, we don't do this right now, but it used to, and all of this stuff that's like, it's been a year and a half. It's been about 2 years actually for people that were already working before we started, that consulting has just been a completely different world. There are companies that are still traveling, right? There's firms that are still sending consultants all over the place, but it's totally different. And as someone who also is very extroverted and whose methods of coping with stress and relaxing and having fun pre-pandemic were all very much like groups of people,
Mhm.
physical activity. I really struggled in like the first year or so, and it took me that much time to kind of figure out what can I do that isn't dancing, for example, or choir, whatever. Like there's so many things that you just couldn't do, or that I couldn't do because I had long COVID for a while as well.
Mhm.
So balancing all that in a new career it's been tough, but I think at this
Right.
point, sliding out of things too.
Yeah, for me, when I started working, I was always at the client's office. That's where I build my hours. I would travel a lot, so that took up a lot of time, and it was easier to compartmentalize, right? Because I'm not in the office, I'm not going to work. And then when I started working from home, at Aperio, that was the model mostly, but we traveled a lot. But it was hard to separate work from home, right? I was kind of always working and always not working, which I don't think is very healthy, as Emma mostly mentioned. So, finding that time to shut off your computer and ballet dance is important. I don't ballet dance, but
Not with that attitude.
It's never too late. I never did it before, and here I am, 23 years old, and I am trying.
There you go. It's never too late. Well, maybe it is too late for me. The other thing is taking time off, and Atrium is the first place I've worked that has unlimited time off, which honestly I was really skeptical about, because I always thought that just means, unlimited means I'll never take it, right? But they have been good about having us take time off, I have to say. But anyway, it was great talking to you both. You both are wonderful colleagues, and I'm proud to be your colleague. And I don't know, any final words?
Well, I feel the same way about you.
Okay.
Thank you for fulfilling one dream of mine to be on a podcast. I appreciate it so much. I'm excited to go back and listen to it.
Next is the Grammys.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again sometime, Emma. Definitely. Galvin, you're doing okay?
Yeah, I think this was fun. I think if you invite us back again, then we will be here. So yeah, 100%.
Thumbs up for both of you. All right.
Great working with you on this. Great working with you in general. So.
All right. I'll see you on another meeting, probably through Atrium. So this is not affiliated with Atrium, so this is not a billable hour. So, all right. Bye.
Bye. Bye.